All right, well, we're on holding by the book of Leviticus chapter 18. Again, 101. Holding by the Leviticus chapter 18, it's part 59. There'll be a part 60, I'm sure. 61, 62, it's a long chapter here. Again, 101. Holding by the book of Leviticus chapter 18. We're in verse 5, still in verse 5. And the Torah says, Shmartem es hukosai, ves mishpatai sher yasel isam ha'adam v'chai behem ani Hashem. That you shall therefore keep my ordinances and my judgments, which if a man do, again, very strange language here, if a man do, shall live by them, or live in them, I am the eternal, right? I am the Lord your God. So we were working our way through the Rabbeinu B'chai, and the Rabbeinu B'chai said that we're going through what the word B'chai means here, to live by them, right? So he said there are four types. Four things that are included in living by them. So one is the person does the mitzvahs on condition to get reward. That was first one. Second one, there's only two we hit, where somebody does the mitzvah, keeps the mitzvahs in order to get rewards in the next world, right? Even though works hard, to keep them, even if he doesn't get reward. But again, right, nonetheless, he'll get that world. In other words, even if he's serving God, not necessarily for the sake of getting reward, but ultimately wants that reward. Yeah. So he will merit to get that reward also. That was the second thing. Shlishi. What is the third thing? Someone who has attention to keep the Torah, to keep the mitzvahs through great love. Yeah. And why are they doing it? They're doing it also not to get reward. Yeah, they're doing it because, or let's say better, not to get reward in the next world, or even seemingly in this world. Even though they work in this world, they do mitzvahs in this world, right? Nonetheless, they're not looking for it in this world or the next world, right? Let's say. So the third example says Rabbeinu B'chai, he's going to get reward in this world and the next world. Why? Because he's not interested in getting rewards in either world, right? Essentially, not interested in getting reward in either world. So therefore, says Rabbeinu B'chai, he'll get reward in both worlds. Like Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. Like Avram, Yitzhak, and Yaakov who served God with great love, even though they're busy doing all kinds of things, right, in this world, right? They were farmers, etc., right? They worked the land, very good, right? So, they lived in this world, obviously, right? So what happened? So says the Rabbeinu B'chai over here that they worked the fields, they were what do you call it? They were farmers, I guess. They were shepherds, let's say better, right? Shepherd's a better word. And they took care of the flocks, right? They did physical things, right? But they served God out of great love. Very good. They served God out of great love. Yeah, so therefore, even though they worked the land, and even though they worked the land hard, and they were shepherds, etc., essentially, what's the issue? They served God out of love. They didn't care about this world. They care about the next world. What do they care about more than anything else? They care about serving God with love. Now, it doesn't say, very interesting, doesn't say with great joy. It says with love, right? Very specific here, right? He says with love. Now, would my assumption be that if they served God with great love, would the assumption be that they served out of great joy? Probably. That's probably a good assumption, even though he doesn't say it, right? He doesn't say it, but he says they serve God regardless, right? Regardless of reward in this world or the next. That's a very high level, right? In other words, you got to live in this world. Everyone has to live in this world, right? You got to eat. You got to put food on the table, right? You got basic obligations, right? You have basic obligations. Very good. So even if you have basic obligations, you assume what? Yeah, you got some reward. You're going to be able to take care of your needs or whatever. So they didn't care about that either. Even though Yaakov says, give me bread, give me this, so I can live, right? He asked God twice. Okay. Right? But in general, it's the work of their hands. Right? They understood everything came from God. That wasn't a question. Right? But their assumption is that they're going to work the land. And regardless of whether they get rewarded in this world or the next. Right? It's going over here, this third idea, or this third category, right? Let's say it's talking about people at the level of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, which isn't too many people. Right? You're talking the greatest of the greatest. Right? So therefore they're working the land, they're doing what they need to do at such a level that they're not going to get reward here or there. Yeah, that's right. That is the third. That's the third level. So again, this would seem to be well beyond everybody else. Yeah, this is a different level, altogether. But again, one thing everybody can strive for. I don't think it's so far-fetched, is that a person can understand, like someone once said to me, they said, oh, when I die, I'm going 6 feet under. I said, I hope for your sake you're right, because if I'm right, you're in serious trouble. I said, life after death, you can tell me that in the sound bite. So I'll give you 30 seconds. They want to give me 10 seconds. So I sent them a link. I don't know if they watched it or not, doesn't really matter. But back to the question, what did they say? They said, what would you do if you found out that everything you've done up until now is going to be worth nothing, and when you die, you get nothing? Right? So I said, I don't think that's the case. Right? I for sure don't think that's the case. Right? But even if it would be, right? Even if it would be, my answer was, there's no better way to live in this world. There's no better way. My actions matter. My actions matter. Everything I do matters. They have repercussions. What I think matters. Yeah, in general. So there are a lot of things that we do that are important. Even though we may think we're an infinitesimally small speck of cosmic dust, if you look at the bigger scheme of things, yeah, we're very small. Even though man thinks we're very big, we go on space stations and, travel up there and all this, okay. But in general, we're very small. Very, very small. That's why, people will say, come on, if I'm that small in general, right? I live in a town, a city, a state, a country, a continent, right? A planet, we're getting smaller, right? Galaxy, getting smaller. So you think, come on, like what I do really matters. Well, Adam and Eve mattered, right? Everyone has to go through death, right? No one gets away from going through death. So obviously what we do matters. What we do is important. What we do is significant. Find any other quote unquote lifestyle that every action is going to be measured. And again, if the Christians were right, I'd be signing up everybody. Be the easiest thing to believe in. No, no repercussions for anything you do. He came to die for your sons, no repercussions. Beautiful. I'd sign up everybody. I'd be the poster child. Poster child for Christianity. The only problem is it's not true. Yeah, that's the only problem. So there, I don't take responsibility for anything. So what we do matters. What I think matters. How I act matters. How I deal with others matters. All these things are important. How I speak or how I don't speak. All these things have repercussions. Yeah, so a person will say, oh, you get all these, restrictions. You can't do this, you can't do that. Okay, you're right. There are a lot of things we can't do. Yeah, that's not the question. The question is what gives life meaning, right? What's important? And what's important is everything I do. That's what's important. Everything else that goes on around me, okay, so we have to deal with, right? We absolutely have to deal with. Some things are easier, some things are harder, some things seemingly impossible. Okay. It's a question of how we're going to react, but it's not just a knee-jerk reaction over here. We have Torah. We have ways to think about things. We have ways to look at the bigger picture, right? We have ways to, deal with suffering in different ways. A lot of ways to deal with things, when it comes to Torah. It doesn't mean, a person makes a mistake and a person's going to think, oh, so I'm going to come to Torah mitzvahs, everything's going to be easy, right? We understand that's not the case, right? Totally not the case, right? But again, where is their real meaning? Yeah, someone will say, real meaning is my family. Good. Family's important. Family can be an albatross. Family's important, right? That's true. And how you interact with family and all this. That's very good. Yeah, is that the only thing? Family is the most important thing and nothing else matters? How you act to others doesn't matter. How you speak doesn't matter. Forget about family. In general, that doesn't matter? Of course, there are many things that matter. You cannot pinpoint it on one thing and say this is the only thing that matters. Because everything fits within Torah. How are you going to react? What are you going to say? What are you going to do? Right? We saw yesterday in Pirkei Avos, vast majority of people, are in pain. Over 90% of people live with pain. Right? 60, 70% live with some sort of mental health illness or something like that. Right? So a lot of people, suffering in many ways. Okay. So the question is how we look at it. Question is how we deal with it. Very good. Yeah. But, if things go wrong and a person doesn't have that anchor, what are they going to say? It's my bad luck. No rhyme or reason this should have happened. Right? Stuff happens, right? Get that t-shirt, stuff happens. Stuff happens. That's it. There's no, my bad luck. No rhyme or reason. Right? God forbid. So everything's calculated. We may not see it. We may not really understand the measure for measure or how it works. Okay. Right? That's very true. And we spoke a few weeks back, my BJQ podcast spoke about Emunah. We spoke there, the conversation between the Brisker Rav Yisrael Zev Salvation, blessed memory, and Rav Shach. Rav Shach, was one of the Torah giants of the last generation, certainly the Brisker Rav as well. And Rav Shach considered him a student of the Brisker Rav. Regardless, right, the Brisker Rav told him, when it comes to Emunah, there are things that you're obligated to believe in, and you're obligated to do whether you understand them or not. And that's a hard thing. Because, some people will say, wrongly, but they'll say it as a block. They'll say, how could I ever do this if I don't understand it? Right? How many people, when they go on an airplane, understand, thermodynamics? Probably not too many. That'd be my guess. Probably not too many. Does that stop them getting on an airplane? No. If they wanted to explain to them, they ask, someone who works for the airline, they'll say, here, put in ChatGPT, get a simple answer, and move on. Otherwise, you're not getting on the flight. Person gets behind the wheel of a car. Yeah, they understand how the intricacies of the car work. Forget about a hybrid or one of these electric cars, whatever. Regular car. You understand how the carburetor works, right? You understand how the fan works. It's connected. You understand other things about the car. Most people say no. Maybe they understand a little bit, some more, some less. Person has to go to the store for something. Yeah, are they going to think about all these things before they get in the car? Or go to ChatGPT before they do it? I don't think so. Right? It doesn't matter. No, some things that matters. I mean, some basic things they have to know. Okay. Right? But more than that, they're not a grease monkey. They're not going to get under the hood and start doing things because they don't know what they're doing. Right? They don't understand how a car works. But that stopped them from getting a car? No. So someone who uses the excuse, but if I was to keep this or keep that, I need to understand it first. I said, okay, let's say I give you this answer. Is that good enough? No. But if I give you that answer? No. Doesn't resonate with me. Doesn't go according to my agenda, my outlook. Okay. Or what about this? What about that? Yeah, we'll give you 10 answers. You can knock them all off. Very good. You can knock them all off. Right now, there are some people kind of feisty. Give them a little bit of credit. They might be a little feisty, but they're throwing that out as a block. Because they're not going to look into it. They're not going to research it. Right? And they're just going to say, oh, I don't like this. Oh, I don't like that answer. I don't like, so if if the answer doesn't resonate, then why would I keep it? Very good. Yeah. So what's the simple answer? What would be the simple answer? Simple answer is that's not your question. Because you're not going to do the research. We understand you're not going to do the research. Okay. Right? So you're not interested in an answer. So what's the difference? I give you 20 answers. You knock them all off. Right? But again, it comes back to the same question. What will the person say? I have to feel it. I have to really understand it. I wouldn't put my life on the line if I didn't understand it. Really? I don't know if that's true. I think it's just an excuse. Now, some people, even if they don't understand anything, and don't really keep very much, kiss the cross or die, a lot of people still give up their lives, even though they don't know why. Even though they don't know what's written in the Torah. Right? They'll still give up their lives. Would everybody do that? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think for today's generation, that's why we're not going to contest it with that. Right? Because that's a very hard test. That's a very hard test. Today, most people probably fail. So most likely, we wouldn't get that test. Previous generation, there were people that, sacrificed their lives. Yeah, died sanctifying God's name. Okay, they get a very high place in the next world. And there were people who didn't. Right, so what happens? If you have an obligation to give up your life and you don't, right? Let's say one of the big threes we spoke about before. Right? It says, V'chai behem, to live by them, not to die by them, except for Gilui Arais, Shvichus Damim, Avodah Zarah. Gilui Arais is immorality. Shvichus Damim is murder. And Avodah Zarah is idolatry. So if a Jew or non-Jew put a gun to your head and say, kill this person or we're going to kill you, you have to die. Whether it's in private or in public, right? For the big three, you got to give up your life, anytime, any place. Now, what happens if you don't? What happens if, okay, I'll kill them, I'll do this, and I won't die. Or I'll kiss the cross, or whatever. Yeah, big deal. So what? Doesn't mean anything to me, right? Still forbidden, still have to give up your life. Okay, let's say you did. So you transgress the Torah prohibition. Very clear Torah prohibition. Yeah, but what happens? What happened over here? Yeah, so the people that gave up their lives, generations that probably came out of them are still intact. Why? Because they stood strong in Torah. Even though some people gave up their lives. The people that didn't give up their lives, right? In general, what's left of them? And they'll give reasons why they didn't have to give up their lives. What's left of their families? Right? So they have these quote unquote philosophical reasons why they didn't do this. No one should have to go through this. Yeah. But they want to. So what's left of them? Nothing. Because they weren't willing to have self-sacrifice for Torah. And if you don't have self-sacrifice for Torah, it doesn't matter how hard it is, doesn't matter what you go through, it won't stick. It will not stick. If a person's wishy-washy, right, it won't stick. You won't pass it down to your kids if you have kids. It's impossible. Right? Because the kids see it's not real by the parents. If they see it's not real by the parents or by the teachers, then it's gone. Right? Gone. Right? You have, let's say in the Reform and Conservative movement, you have teachers that don't really believe in God or believe a lot of this stuff, but whatever, it's a job. They do it, etc. So, some may be more religious, less religious, doesn't really matter. But if they themselves don't believe it, and the parents themselves don't enforce it or don't believe it, what are the kids going to believe? I mean, this is not rocket science. Right? Totally not rocket science. They say the family that prays together stays together. Okay. But the families that don't pray together, you know why? Because they don't go to synagogue. Right? Yeah, you have a huge amount of Jews that are not affiliated with any synagogue. Now, I would say, so what? If you're associated with synagogues that trample on Torah, then it's not worth anything either way. They say at least you got something. Okay. Right? So I would have told you years ago, even if they got something, that something is very watered down, very diluted. Yeah, at best. So if it's very watered down and diluted, what are the kids going to get? That's what they're going to get. So it's not, not worth very much because they're not going to take it seriously either. And they'll give to their kids even less. Right? But a small part of me would say, well, at least they're exposed to something. Maybe they'll get inspired one day and decide, to keep X, Y, or Z. Maybe. Very small percentage. Right? Very, very small percentage. Now, there are, does that mean a person, can't come back? No. Person can always come back. The problem is, person, let's say, after a long day in school, they have like 2 days a week, Hebrew school, and then you're preparing for the Bar Mitzvah or Bat Mitzvah, whatever. It's not so much fun, in general. You want to play with your friends, you want to go out, you want to do other things. You can't. Why not? You got to go to Hebrew school. Got to learn Hebrew. Got to learn how to read Hebrew. Got to learn how to chant from the Torah. Right? But the bigger scheme of things, it doesn't mean anything to them. It means, a big party and money and whatever, but that's it. It doesn't really mean very much. So what's going to happen? So, in the experience, let's just say for argument's sake, it's not the greatest experience. Yeah, so there are people that are like scarred from it. They don't have anything to do with it. Yeah, first of all, they think, wow, I went to Hebrew school. I learned some of these things. Maybe not as much as you know, okay. But they learned about it. You don't learn about certain things. Okay. Yeah, that means they have the Jewish education of a 5-year-old. Granted. So what does that mean? It means nothing. Right? Now the question is, they have a negative experience with this, which probably a lot of people do, because they don't really want to be there. The teacher doesn't want to really be there and other things. I can understand. Right? I can understand it's a negative experience. Totally negative experience. Now, what happens when you have a negative experience? You don't want to repeat it. You sure don't want to repeat it. You sure do not want your kids to go through it. If you went through it, whatever, you don't necessarily want them to go through it, but you'll do it anyway. Why? Because they have to have a bar mitzvah. They have to have a bar mitzvah, right? The funny thing is, I heard somebody say a while ago, I don't know, they were in the 70s, 80s, whatever it was, they said, there's a woman said, I was never bat mitzvah. Okay. Does that mean you didn't reach, adulthood for the sake of being, an adult in Judaism? The age of 12 in a day, you became an adult. Okay. No party, no reading from the Torah, none of these other things you did. Even for a guy, doesn't matter. Yeah. Guy wasn't called to Torah, never had a bar mitzvah. Okay. that disqualify him from being a Jew? No. Doesn't disqualify him at all. Yeah. Realize never had a bar mitzvah. He wants to prepare and do a bar mitzvah. Good, so let him do it. Right? That means he's not a Jew if he didn't do it. Doesn't mean anything. I mean, it's a coming of age. Let's say better. It's a coming of age. If you're 13 in a day for a boy, 12 in a day for a girl, right? And you didn't do anything else, the time passed, right? You never went to synagogue, you never did anything. Don't pass go, don't collect 200, right? Monopoly, right? Don't pass go, don't collect 200. You did nothing. Yeah, you still a Jew or not? Well, it depends. Someone's going to say it depends. What does it depend on? If your mother's Jewish, very good. So if your mother's Jewish, you're Jewish. Good. You're Jewish. Okay. You come of age. Does anything have to happen when you come of age? Technically, no. Nothing has to happen. You weren't called to the Torah, big deal. Yeah. And for a woman, whatever. Whatever she's going to do. Yeah. Does that matter? No. Doesn't matter across the board. We're not discriminating here. Either way, it doesn't matter. Right? Oh, we want to have a party. It's coming of age. These people, those kids don't know what it means. They don't have a clue what it means. No one's teaching them really what it means. Right? Be part of the Jewish community. What does that mean to them? What does that mean to them? Nothing. Doesn't really mean that much. Some people have more Jewish pride, less Jewish pride. All right. But for most people, it doesn't mean a whole lot. Does not mean a whole lot. Okay. Yeah, so if they didn't get called to the Torah, that means they're not Jewish? I mean, it's just a funny thing to say. Yeah, very funny thing to say. I was never a bar mitzvah. Okay. You want to prepare, you want to do it, you can do it. You're obligated to do it? Certainly not. And if you died never doing a bar mitzvah, does it matter? No. Doesn't matter. It's a nice thing. You get called to the Torah, you read from the Torah, very good. Obligatory? That's a nice custom. Definitely a nice custom. Some people that, it's hard for them or whatever, they get called to the Torah, they're reading from the Torah. Most people want to prepare and want to do it, and that's what everyone else does. And, they read from the Haftorah, they don't understand the Haftorah, right? A lot of times. Heard some people rail against it, and, why make them do it if it's something they don't really understand, unless they're going to really be taught properly. Okay. There is what to be said for that. Very good, but what afterwards? Well, it's all about party, more bar than mitzvah. That's all it is. There's no meaning. Right? Yeah, if I take a survey, my guess would be people after the age of bar mitzvah, 12 in a day, 13 in a day. Yeah, what percentage of these kids that grow up later have any sort of Jewish education afterwards? Very slim. Very small amount. Any type of Jewish education. Right? Adult education. Now, some will. Might be some that will. Okay. We'll grant that 0.0001%. Right? We'll grant that, maybe. Maybe a little bit generous today. Okay. But at the end of the day, it's a very small percentage. Very small percentage. Right? So, is it any surprise all these places are falling apart? No. It's sad. 100% it's sad. But, is it surprising? No. Even the best of circumstances. Right? But again, if you're going to give a kid a proper education, good, give him a proper education. Right? But if you're going to give him a bogus education, just to fulfill your obligation, okay, your choice. That's for sure your choice. At the end of the day, not a good idea. Right? Certainly not a good idea because you're not going to get anything from it. Not going to keep Torah mitzvahs. I mean, it could be. You have handfuls of people every year that come back. Yeah. They grew up knowing nothing. I shouldn't say handfuls. You have people coming back. Right? But again, the vast majority are lost. And why they lost? Because they don't know anything about their heritage. That's why they lost. That's exactly why they lost. In either case, right? In either case, it's sad. It's not surprising. Right? It's certainly not surprising. But that's what it is. Right? That's what it is. So here's the third level. Let's get back here. right? What's the third level? The third level is where, a very high level here. You got a level where people like Bar Mitzvah and Yaakov didn't care about this world or the next one. Right? So seemingly they get both. Right? That's what the Rabbeinu B'chai here says. Again, you're talking about very high level. Very, 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 very high level. But I would say, even for us peons, even for us small fry down in this world, and very weak, right? This cream puff generation, right? We can reach a level where, I don't think it's so far-fetched, we can reach a level where a person can say, it doesn't matter if I get reward or not. Reward's not important. What's important is how I live my life. That's what's important. That's what's significant. Oh, and get the hoodsie. To get rewards? Okay, that's a bonus. You're not living for the reward. What are you living for? Right? What essentially are you living for? You're living for the fact that this is not only the right thing to do, not only are you willing to sacrifice your life to do it, but it gives you meaning. And it get, even for a non-Jew, right? Even if they don't convert. There's no greater way to get meaning and to understand how precious life is. Right? And what I think matters. And how I act matters. And what I do matters. And what the repercussions are. Yeah, that gives meaning. Someone will say, well, family's the most important thing. Okay, family's important. I'm not going to say family's not important. Family can be an albatross also, as we always say. Right? That's why you're living? The only reason because of family. There are other reasons to live. There are other reasons to get benefit in this world. Even if you have a good relationship with family. Even if you have a great relationship, it's part of it. And certainly part of it, no question. Is that the whole picture? It's not the whole picture. For sure not the whole picture. Right? It's an aspect of it. But when you look in the, people say, oh, you don't live in the real world. This is the real world. How I interact with others, that's pretty important. How I keep the law of the land, that's pretty important. How people view me in that sense, that's important. All these things are important. Yeah, that's only part of the piece. That's only part of the puzzle. Yeah, it's all underneath this umbrella. It's underneath the umbrella that what we call Torah. That's what it is. That is the umbrella. Right? That's the umbrella here. So regardless of whether we're going to get reward or not, there's no better way to live. That's what we believe. Now, as we said before, no better way to live. Does that mean everyone's, bank accounts are full? No. Does that mean they don't have any problems? No. They're going to have a million problems. Right? It could be physical problems, it could be mental problems, it could be all kinds of things. Livelihood, health, all, everything. Everything combined. Very good. Everything combined. If you have a big dose of it. Big dose of hardship. Whatever it may be. Okay. But again, people make the mistake. If I'm doing this, trying to go in the right path. I'm trying to do what I'm supposed to do. It shouldn't be this hard. Yeah. And that's just a mistake. That is an absolute mistake. Because that's not what it means. Right? Now, what people mean is, it shouldn't be that hard. The difficulty I'm having should not be that hard. Granted, it can be hard. They don't disagree. Granted, it for sure can be hard. Say it has to be this impossible. Right? They have to hit so many roadblocks. But if you don't hit roadblocks, you don't grow. You say, okay, I get it. But people would agree, I think, and say it's still better. It's still unfair in the sense that, granted, it's supposed to be hard. They don't have any question it's supposed to be hard. Okay. So what's the question? The question is, doesn't have to be this hard. Right? I had someone come to Israel, and I told them in explicit terms in 3 different languages, yeah, that coming here is going to be very hard to live in many ways. So they came anyway. Told them to go to the States, be much easier in the States. Someone had been in the States, I don't know, 20, 30 years. I said, go there, convert there, and then come back. And then come. It'd be a lot easier. Save yourself a lot of aggravation. No, we want to go straight to Israel. Okay. So they came. They had a hard time. They had a hard time. Yeah, they eventually they went to a place, they fit in, whatever. But they had a very hard time. Now, the person comes back to me and says, well, you said it was going to be hard. I said, right. I said, I cursed you 3 times, at least. Yeah, but you didn't say it was going to be this hard. So of course I did. I warned you. You just didn't take what I said seriously. Or you'll say it doesn't matter. I'll do whatever it takes. Okay? So if you're willing to do whatever it takes, then you can't complain. You know what you were potentially up against. Right? So people understand that. Most people understand that. They have that level of clarity. Good. But what's the problem? Problem is when they get sledgehammered on all sides and it gets out of control, that's when the person says, but it doesn't have to be this hard. Who's to say? Who's to say? There are people who curse out their communities and what they put them through and the hardship and everything else going through conversion. Okay. And they say people said things and whatever, good. You know what my answer was? Every single time, so convert. You don't have an obligation to convert. No, if you want to, whatever. And, benefits, blah, blah, blah. Okay. After they converted, I don't hear any of this. Because eventually they got what they wanted. Okay. Right? But isn't being in limbo, not fun? Yeah. Isn't it hard? Yeah. Isn't it hard to know which way you're going to go and how it's going to end up? Yes. Okay, person doesn't have to go through it if you don't want to. There's no obligation, but if you choose to go through it, understand. There can be roadblocks. There might be serious roadblocks. Very well, maybe serious roadblocks. Okay. Yeah, you have to be prepared for that. And if you're not prepared for it, you should go through it. But the Rabbi says, yeah, I was prepared for it, but not to this extent. Right? Now, what's the assumption? The assumption is it doesn't have to be that hard. Who's to say? Who's the one in charge? You or God? God's in charge. So for some people, God makes it easier. For whatever reason. Some other people have to go through the ringer. And every step they take, it's going to be hard. Okay? Yeah? The question is, are they going to be stronger by it or get crushed by it? Now I say a little bit of both. Some people will form who they are. It'll make who they are, make them much stronger. Right? Doesn't mean they don't have days of weakness, but whatever, they'll be much stronger. Very good. And what happened to others? They'll get crushed. They'll absolutely get crushed. And they'll say, it doesn't have to be this way, it shouldn't be this way. Until, let's say, eventually until they convert. Now let's say they cross the threshold. They actually convert. Do these things matter anymore for the most part? No. We're going through it, being in doubt. We always say there's nothing worse than being in doubt. Right? That's very true. But at the end of the day, what happens? That's what it is. That is what it is. Right? So most people would say, yeah, it's true. It's true, I'll do whatever it takes. And it's true, I don't care how hard it is. Right? So when I hear that, I say, okay, when it feels impossible, and you feel you can't get out of bed, and you feel it's so unbelievably difficult, I said, don't come to me. Don't look for a shoulder to cry on. Like I say, tough love. No, If you understand what you're getting into, yeah, at whatever level, then that's what it is. You know what you're getting yourself into. But what happens? What happens is there's doubt. It's not necessarily questioning themselves. So it might be that also. Right? But when you're in doubt, you don't know which way to turn or which way is going to end up or whatever it's going to be. Nobody likes to be in doubt. Right? Being in doubt is hard. It's 100%, it's hard. There's no question. That being the case, what happens? Either people get broken by it, or people get stronger by it, or anywhere in between. Now, the thing that comes up is people will say, it doesn't have to be that hard. According to who? People forget one very important thing. I mean, there are a lot of things people forget. One important thing is that the rabbinical court is signing off on this conversion. They are signing off and saying you are a proper candidate for conversion. And now, let's say they have certain knowledge. Let's say they have enough knowledge to convert. Yeah? Well, let's say this person's a blowhard. Try somebody like this. They were never a student of mine. In the process of conversion, even till today. Right? In social media, they blessed. They're blessed. Rabbinical courts, rabbis. Yeah, they're not careful what they say. They're a blowhard. Now, again, was the process hard for him? Yes. You feel he got discriminated against? Yes. Okay, let's say it's true. Let's say it's true. But they haven't converted. Okay. Now, the Beis Din that signs off on this, if they know this, which they probably do, right? If they know this, then it comes back to haunt them. In other words, they're signing off. What are they signing off on? They're signing off this person's the proper candidate for conversion. They know their stuff. Let's say it's true. Let's say 100% it's true, but the character traits are bad. There's a story, a friend of mine also works with converts here, said a famous rapper wanted to convert, serious about conversion, goes in front of a certain Beis Din there, wasn't to the chief rabbinate, was going through a certain Beis Din, and what did the Beis Din want? Or let's say better, what did this person want? This person wanted to continue to do what he was doing. But maybe, I don't know, maybe change the lyrics a little bit, I don't know. Right? But he wanted to continue in his venue, to continue to rap in his venue as an Orthodox Jew. And the Beis Din said no. They said, no. You want to do it in a kosher way? Let's say like Nissim Black, like what he does? It's one thing. But you want to do and use the words and this and that the way you want to do it? The way you're going to continue to do it? No. We're not putting our stamp on that. Now, there are a number of reasons why they said this. One, what's the main one? They have reputation. Here you have somebody who converts an Orthodox Jew is cursing left and right by rapping. And doing it in immodest terms as well. That's a major thing. Right? How can they put their name on that? But it goes further than that. Right? That's the main thing. I would say it's 95%. That's the main thing. What's the other 5%? The other 5% is that whatever the Beis Din says in general, that's it. They say jump, you say how high. For better or for worse. Yeah, you do what the Beis Din tells you to do. Finished. You got to show humility here. And if a person walks in and says, no, I'm not going to do that, and I am not going to listen, what are they going to do to you? They're going to blackball you. They'll say, okay. We are not signing off on this, until you change your ways. And if you decide you're not going to change your ways, okay, go somewhere else. I'm sure the person found somewhere else to convert. But understand, they're signing off on who the person is, not just by what they know. What do you do if you have someone's belligerent? In general, they're belligerent. Why are they belligerent? That's a personality. There are some people out there that are belligerent. Yeah. There are some people like that. Now, that being the case, they also have to sign off on that. So again, if a person's bad characters, everybody does. Nobody's perfect. But if they have certain character traits that are going to make them look bad, yeah, because of how they act. Let's say they have anger issues. Let's say they have mental health issues, and they're not taking medication or whatever. Who knows what? Bad, seriously bad character traits. Why is the basic going to convert them? It's not only about knowledge. Yeah, I'll give an example. Rabbi brings us down a number of places. Says somebody, let's say, completes and passes exams to be a rabbinic court judge. Now here in Israel, you pass the exams, and at some point you get appointed to certain whatever rabbinical court it is. Rabbi says that's not the only criteria. Book knowledge in this case you have to have, no question. Yeah, there's a lot of things you have to know to be a rabbinic court judge. Massive amount of information. Good. Yeah, but who's going to determine if they have fear of heaven? You can't determine that in a written exam. Now, could be. You go to a graphologist. Now, there are graphologists out there who know what they're doing. They can look at the handwriting and tell you about the person without even meeting them. People want to say it's real, it's not real, whatever, it doesn't matter. Let's say it's real. So they can say, oh, this person has this, this person has that, right, etc. Yeah. How are they going to determine your Shemayim? Fear of heaven. How is the basic going to determine that? They're not. Because you cannot see it in a written exam. It will not show up in a written exam. Right? So my Rebbe would say, if that's the case, how can you appoint somebody based on the exam itself? What's his answer? He says, you can't. Right? You need great rabbinic authorities in order to determine that. Right? It's not just the fact they passed the test. Very good, they passed the test. That's good. That you need. That's the beginning. They have to pass the test. Okay. Yeah, that's very good. But what would I say otherwise? Their fear of heaven, how do you know? Where'd it come from? Where'd it come from? Right? That you need great rabbis to see. That you need them to determine. If they'll base they got a 75, 80, or 90 on their test. Okay. They passed. Doesn't matter. Whatever the threshold is of passing. Yeah, so they have credentials. They passed. Very good. So now, question is, where are they going to go? Which basin they're going to go to and how they're going to do it and all that. Very good. But that's not the whole thing. That's not the whole picture. First, they're going to have, we've mentioned this many times. First, they're going to have tremendous book knowledge. They can be disgusting human beings. Gemara Chagiga says you want to learn under someone, some rabbi, you have to look at them as if they are an angel, as if they're a malach. Yeah, now does that mean they're perfect? No. You have to look at them at a much higher level. Put them on a pedestal. Now again, it doesn't make them perfect by any stretch. But what would I say? I would say character traits have to be impeccable. In how they act and what they do, and etc. Forget about their knowledge. Knowledge is one thing, right? But it goes beyond knowledge, right? A Jew, even if they're not, let's say they're religious, let's say they don't have world-class knowledge, in Torah. Okay. But they still represent the Jewish people. They're still out there in the world. They don't have to be impeccable. We say this all the time. Character traits have to be impeccable. Because you have to be the same on the outside you are on the inside. Yeah, you're going to be a bench. You're in the store, you wait your turn, push, whatever. Right? You're going to be a bench. Person can have encyclopedic knowledge and be disgusted in God's eyes. One of our rabbis, blessed memory, told me, learned under somebody, wouldn't mention him by name. And he said, absolute Talmudic genius. Talmudic genius. Yeah. Character traits were so bad, and generally he didn't explain, but he said character traits were so bad he couldn't learn under them. 2 weeks, he said he lasted. Not even. So what's the Torah work? Because someone's going to tell me, Derech Eretz keep no Torah. Literally, Derech Eretz means the way of the world. What does it mean, though? It means character traits. Character traits come before Torah itself. You're going to say, but Torah came first. Very good. If the Torah came, you don't have character traits, what's the Torah worth? Yeah? Now, can people do things wrong because they get desperate and there's pressure and whatever? And yes. Okay. People can make mistakes. There's no question people can make mistakes. Right? But yeah, first of all, you have to admit mistakes. And second of all, you have to work that. You shouldn't make mistakes. You have to work on character development. It's a huge thing. It's called Musar. You got to work on character development. Now, does that mean even the great rabbinic scholars, they've had anger issues? They've had other issues? Of course they did. Yeah, they worked on themselves. Yeah. They worked themselves at a very high level. But, it doesn't mean they don't have any evil inclination, for other things. They have evil inclination. Greater the person spiritually, the greater the evil inclination. Yeah, so it works against them. Works very hard against them. We don't necessarily see that. People don't necessarily see it by us, in general. No one knows what's going on inside. No one else knows what a person is up against. And at the end of the day, everyone will pick their own problems and won't take someone else's. Because every single person, whatever they go through, right, is not the same as everybody else. Some more, some less. There are things a person can have in common, okay. But in general, each person has their own message to give to the world, in general. So we would say that whatever they go through is unique to them. Right? In other words, if a person has an obligation to reach whatever potential they have, nobody knows exactly what their potential is, but I can say, or we can say, let's say better, we can say that since every person's potential is different, the potential itself cannot be reached by anybody else. Right? What does that mean? It means very simple. It means that a person has certain potential. Okay? Can I reach their potential? No. Why not? Because the potential is different. Can someone reach my potential? No. Or because my potential is that high, right? Because their potential is different. Every person, whatever the source of the soul, has different potential. How are they going to reach it? Good, they have to work. That's what we're here in this world for, right? The Ramchal says we're here in this world to toil, right? To work hard. Very good. That's our job. Okay. But at the end of the day, people can help a person try and reach their potential in different ways, but they can't do it themselves. Because the potential from one person to another could be very different. Will be very different, let's say. Be extremely different. Yeah, a person can help somebody. Okay. So we have to, does anyone know what's going on behind closed doors? No. Well, sometimes people will tell them. Okay. Right? But at the end of the day, people don't say. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Right? But I would venture to guess, because I think it's true, that when they hear what someone else is going through, what would they say? I'm glad I'm not going through it. Well, that's good for them. But I'm not going through it. Okay. Yeah. So very good for them. And everybody's going to be like that. Right? Everybody's going to be like that. Nobody is going to say, oh, I'm so happy what they have. They don't want it. Nobody wants what someone else has in general. They're happy what they have. Right? For the most part. Right? So if God would put out, all these, plastic bags and inside the plastic bags, all the suffering and difficulty a person has. And a person looks at all these bags, tens of thousands, millions, they scan all these bags. Which one are they going to pick up? Right? 99% they'll pick up their own. They're not going to pick up someone else's. Because nobody wants to go what someone else is going through. People may think, oh, maybe it's easier than this. Maybe. But usually the case is they're happy what they're going through and not what someone else is going through. Right? And the reason is very simple. Let's say that person has money and you're suffering. Okay. Yeah, but they don't have any family life. They have health issues. Right? And you don't have that. You have just the opposite. Very good. Oh, I don't want that. Right? Or whatever you see in things that other people have or don't have, and you compare it to what you have. Yeah? You compare it to what you have. So a person's going to be ecstatic what they have in general. I'm not going to say it's easy. No one's going to say it's easy. Right? But what they have doesn't compare to what someone else has. They say, oh, I wouldn't want that. Oh, I wouldn't want this. I wouldn't want the other thing. Right? Such a high percentage of people, let's say, as you saw last night, suffer from some sort of health issue. Right? Huge percentage suffer from a health issue. You don't suffer from any health issues. You're one of the 5% or 10% do not suffer from health issues. Any health issue. So you're in the minority. 95% suffer some level, something. Right? So you say, yeah, but I got this, that, and the other thing. Okay. So take someone, got mild arthritis, let's say. And mild arthritis. You want to take on mild arthritis? And take away something else? I would think not. You want to take on a little bit of diabetes? No. High blood pressure? No. You don't drink enough in general, so you get dehydrated a lot? No. You don't want it. Get up problems. You don't want to suffer with health issues. Right? 95% or more suffer from health issues at some level. That's a huge amount. Huge amount. So a person doesn't have health issues, kiss the ground. And if you have mild health issues, and it could be worse, kiss the ground. But people don't look at the world like that. For sure they don't. They don't see the bigger picture. They say, I just suffer from this, I have that. Of course, they got, chronic pain. You can say certain medication can help, this, that, sometimes better, sometimes not. People got, fibromyalgia. It's a horrific thing. Right? I know someone who has it, or whatever, of someone who has it. Well, has ways to go in physical therapy, different things. So it's a horrific thing to go through. Well, people, suffer from CMV. They're just physically tired every day. Chronic fatigue. There's no way I don't know where it comes from. Yeah, you boost your immune system, you do this, you do that. A lot of things, okay, maybe help a little bit here, a little bit there. You're always tired. No matter how much sleep you get, no matter how much rest you get, your body's weak. Your body is weaker. Anyone want to sign up for that? I don't think so. Right? So all these things, whatever a person has, they're thankful they have that, not what someone else has. That's usually the case. Right? It's very rare to say, well, I wish I had that, not this. Very rare. right? Person suffers, let's say, financially. Plenty of people we saw, 60% of Americans at least, don't make it, don't make it from paycheck to paycheck, or can't make it from paycheck to paycheck, that's it. Yeah, or their mind is till they get their next paycheck, whatever it's going to be. Okay. Saw 50% in England and other places, whatever it is. Yeah, so let's say someone's got money, they got plenty of money. They say, oh, I wish I had that lifestyle. So you look a little bit closer at what they have and what, but they have other things that are problematic. They'll go with their spouse and speak to their kids and this. Right? So what's the money worth? And it's very easy to nitpick what other people have. Oh, this will be so good, this and that. But if you look a little bit deeper and you see all the other problems associated with it, you say, no, I'll take mine. Everyone will pick up their own problems. They'll pick up their own waste. Yeah, because and that's what it means. That is specific to you. Right? That's what you understand best, what you yourself have gone through. Right? That's what others say. You can never judge someone else unless you've 100% been in their shoes. You have to been in what they're going through. Not at the same time, but you have to have gone through what they've gone through in order to make any comments. In order to open up your mouth. Right? In other words, you can't say, wow, it must feel like this, you don't know. You can guess. Right? But you can't say definitively. Why not? Because you've never experienced it. Right? You can speak about it. You might be an expert in certain things, but it's not the same as you yourself went through it. Right? Right? Give an example. Right? Someone, had all their money stolen, so I can speak to people about, who had difficulty with money. Yeah? Riches to rags overnight. Right? Now, can I empathize with people if they've gone through it? I can empathize. Could I give certain advice on it? I could. But is it the same as if I had gone through it or not? No. It's not the same. But if you've gone through it, whatever it is, then you become, a much bigger expert in that. Why? Because you yourself went through it. You knew yourself how to deal with it. Right? And everything goes with it. Right? So, some people would say, but, it's already been done. Right? I love that. It's already been done. Okay, the person's in the grave now. Good. It's already been done. Very good. That doesn't mean it was painful. Take away the pain, no? Take away all the repercussions, what it did. Won't go into detail. Yeah? It doesn't matter. The person, person apologized, and that's it. That's the way it goes. No empathy, no nothing. I told somebody once. I said, if you were to know what happened and what all the ramifications, all the way down, I said, you wouldn't sleep at night. You would never sleep the rest of the days of your life. I'm not putting myself on a pedestal, just saying. Hardship, other things. You wouldn't know. You wouldn't know. You wouldn't sleep either. Oh, but the person already did it. What's the big deal? Okay, you move on. Pick yourself up. You got to move on, right? That's what life is. You have ups and you have downs. Okay. Sometimes you have serious downs. Okay. Yeah, you don't want to hear that. The person's shallow enough. Shallow enough, they won't get it. I said it a few times. Last 20 years. Few times. Could have said a lot more. Said it a few times. Not crying over spilt milk. 20 years, 20 years. Okay. You want to know? You really want to understand what happened? Yeah, what happened the day after, and 3 days later, and a week later, and months later. And everything goes with it? No, I don't think you want to know that. I'm pretty sure you don't want to know that. All right, now, what could someone claim? What's the easy claim? Easy claim is, oh, you're very bitter. Take a look at the bigger picture. Could be very bitter. We say, why did this happen? Why did God allow it to happen? Good, you can ask a lot of questions. Right? But at the end of the day, right? At the end of the day, imagine what the repercussions could be. Right? Just like imagine. Phone calls. creditors, potentially losing a house, this, that, overnight. Overnight with not a penny to pay for anything. That could be like long-term problems, yeah? Long-term problems. Person already did it with, like, okay, so you're not allowed to bear a grudge. Very good. That's a good test. Not allowed to bear a grudge. Not allowed to hate a Jew in his heart. Can hate what he did. Okay, can't hate the person. That's a big test. That's a big test. Okay, should I take it further? No, you don't have to go further. I could. I can take you through all the detail. Every last one of them. And you won't ask that question again. Yeah, you say, come on, it's too much, it's cruel, it's this. Good, I didn't do it. Right? I didn't have to do it. But a person with half a brain, when they understand, well, this is kind of catastrophic. This is like a major trauma. It's already done. Somebody says, well, it's already been done. That doesn't answer anything. That doesn't answer anything. Does it answer the embarrassment? No. Does the credit card getting shut down? No. Does it answer all these other things? No. Doesn't answer anything. So where's the empathy? Oh, you got anger. Of course. But if I had Torah, I would have been crushed. Absolutely crushed. Yeah, there are ways to deal with it. Ways you have to move on. Ways you have to see the bigger picture. Yeah, was it pretty every day? No. Wasn't pretty every day. But, somebody does not want to hear. They do not want to hear all the detail, what happened, A to B to C to D to E. They wouldn't sleep. They would not sleep. Right? So, but that gives me the ability to speak to others, give them strength. Because I know what it's like. Creditors code. Other things. Know what it's like. Yeah, that's not the same as just empathizing. And say, oh, that must be terrible. That must be, yeah, you can give advice. I'm not saying the person can't give advice. They can give wisdom over here. But somebody who actually went through it, it's not the wisdom part they're going to get. They're going to get the practical day-to-day, how'd you cope? How'd you deal with this? How'd you deal with all these things in general? That's a whole different thing. That's much more powerful. Much more powerful. Right? But again, if the person didn't go through it, you can empathize. That's about all you can do. Right? Right? That's it. You can't do more than that, and it can't be expected. Cannot be expected. Now, you can get everybody a Monday morning quarterback, and everyone gives their advice. Right? Everyone can give their advice. Very good. I'll tell you what's even more frustrating, just on this topic, is, you can have people talk out of both sides of the mouth. Yeah, you had money, you should have done this. You don't have money, you should have done that. Well, you don't get it both ways. You don't get it both ways. Okay. But at the end of the day, it's much more real when someone's gone. It doesn't matter what it's through, what a person's gone through. If they've gone through a similar thing, maybe not all the details, but similar, they can talk about it. They have every right to talk about it. Why? They went through it. Probably write books on it also, but that's not the point. Right? They are an expert in going through X, Y, and Z. Now, how they came through it, maybe they need therapy for it, other things, okay. Yeah. We're not going to say every day was, they're dancing on air, so to speak. Even if you see the bigger picture, it's trauma. It's some major trauma. It's even better when someone looks down and says, well, that must have hurt. Would it help me out? No, it just looked like it hurt. Okay. Empathy is the worst. Someone doesn't have it, you can't expect them to have it. Learn this later in life. Yeah, but that's the truth. That is the truth. Someone doesn't have an empathetic bone in their body. Can you expect it? No. Can never expect it. You can want it. You want as much as you want. Yeah. To expect it, you would think that's obvious. That's what you would think. Right? No. Right? Everyone goes through whatever they go through. And everything they go through, okay, people can go through similar things, but it's not the same. Each person is their own dynamic. That's what the Mishnah in Sanhedrin says. The Mishnah says that world was created for me, each person their own world. Literally, each person their own world. That means each person, whatever they go through, their own world. Now, that world doesn't just affect them. That world affects others around them. And what someone does to another person can affect not just them, can affect everybody. Whatever it is. Although not so pretty. Could be. Could be positive, has positive effect, could have a negative effect. But if it has a negative effect, it doesn't normally just affect the person. What does it do? It affects everybody. Everybody around them. Right? And what happens? What happens in general where a person, you get no empathy. Or even better. People say, well, you should have done this. Well, you should have done that. Well, you should have done the other thing. But you didn't. What's the point? A person was stubborn. A person didn't want to listen. A person thought they had the answers. A person thought this. A person thought that. Okay. Doesn't make the person feel better. Certainly not. Yeah. So each person goes through whatever they go through. Yeah, it could be a lot of things at once, which usually happens. And it doesn't just affect them. It affects everyone around them. But each person is their own world, so to speak. So it affects them, affects people around them, and at the same time, they have to function in this world. Now, is this world hard to function? It's a hard world to live in. We made it a hard world to live in. Sometimes easier, sometimes not. Sometimes we make our own mistakes. Right? Got to pay for our own mistakes. Okay. Sometimes there's serious repercussions. Yeah. That's how you learn. But you make drastic mistakes. Granted. But at the end of the day, whatever a person goes through, and there are some people, their main struggle in life is, I spoke about this last night. This topic always, keeps coming up. And that is money. And they live paycheck to paycheck. Right? And that's 60% of Americans. That's a high percentage. It's a very high percentage. That means most people not making ends meet. That's what it means. We're not talking about a recession. They're not making ends meet. Why not? Because they're not. Because God doesn't want them to make ends meet. Even if they're, I knew somebody with a lawyer. I forget what type of lawyer they were. They were making a lot of money. Doesn't seem like. They were comfortable, but, seemingly didn't make a ton of money. So they said, what happens? It's advertising, it's this, maybe, they get enough clients, company this, maybe it's bedside manner and how they talk to people. I don't know. It could be many things. Right? You can pinpoint on many things. What's the bottom line? God wanted to make money. God wanted them. That's their trial in life. They didn't have to necessarily try with their kids. Kids, let's say turned out all right. Or not with their spouse. Things were okay for the most part. That was their main trial. And there are people that is their main trial throughout their lives. They sometimes better, sometimes not, sometimes, they're on their knees. Okay. Right? For some people, that's their trial. Some people, what's their trial? Health. That's their trial. Or it could be both. It could be a mixture. It could be, family could be their trial. These other things they don't have an issue with per se. But then they feel very lonely. They feel subjugated. They feel like an outcast. They, whatever. So the people that want to be the closest to, spit them out. Okay? But they have a career, right? And they're successful. And they don't have health issues. So they got all those things going for them. Yeah, but the most important people around them don't give a lick. They don't give a lick. So what's all the fame and everything else worth? Even the health. What's it worth? Each person has their own thing. How did they get it? Because God gave it to them. Maybe more in tune to it, whatever. Well, maybe it's personality. I don't know, but God gave it to them. Whatever it is. Some people gave more of a dose of this. Some people more of a dose of that. Some people huge dose of all of it put together. Okay. But he did it. Because he's trying to extract something from a person. He's trying to get them reach whatever that potential is, which most likely is something that's so hard to do, you'd rather slit your eyeballs with glass before you do it. That's probably, someone explained to me once, that's probably what you're doing in this world. Could be anything, a person doesn't want to show gratitude. They have this, I don't know, thing about showing gratitude to people, right? So for them, it's very, very hard. It's like they'd rather hide under a brick than show gratitude. Okay, whatever it is. It's not going to be an easy thing to fix. It's going to be a very hard thing to fix. And each one has whatever it is. But their trials and whatever they go through are unique to them. There's overlap with other people. Other people have maybe similar things. They could have similar things. Yeah. They could have similar things going on. Well, not necessarily the same. Someone here says a lot of people probably make their own mistakes. Yeah, it's part of it. I don't think it's the only thing. Yeah. I think people, they don't just set themselves up with problems. It's part of it. Right? I don't think it's the whole picture. All right. The whole picture is other things they have to go through, regardless of whether they did it or not. Right? They're going to be subjected to. Yeah. Someone, let's say, a person was trusted and they did something wrong. Yeah, maybe something egregious. You say, oh, I never should have trusted them. And there were signs and person was trusted. Yeah, no reason to think otherwise. No reason to think otherwise. Right? And they do X, Y, or Z. What's going to happen? Person never could have known this. Right? Impossible to know. Why was it impossible to know? Because it was impossible to know. God didn't open your eyes or anyone else around you to warn you. Right? Let's say. So what happened? A person got sucked in. Very good. They got sucked in. But that's part of the trial. Right? If it was something they could have known, they choose to do something else and they don't listen and blah, 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 you can say they brought it on themselves. Okay? Is that the vast majority of things? I don't know. I wouldn't say that. I would say for some things, yes. Some things I would definitely agree. Right? They brought it on themselves. And that, God says, I didn't have to help you. You did it, I didn't have to stop you. Some things I stopped you. Very good. This I didn't stop you. You didn't have enough extra lives, whatever it was, I didn't stop you. Okay. Right? Some things for sure we did to ourselves. That's nothing to talk about. Yeah, is it the majority? I don't know. I wouldn't say it's the majority, per se. Right? There are things that are beyond our control. Called onus. Beyond our control. It's something we could not have known. Right? In my case, person well trusted. They've been with my father 25 years. Right? This, forgot to mention. This class should be Ili Nishmas for an uplift of his soul. This is your side. They died. Right? Nachum Dov ben Shmuel. And made money with this person, lost money with this person. Whatever it was, trusted. Over 25 years. So I was 18 years old, had this money. I said, leave it by him. What do you need it for? You don't need it. He'll watch it, he'll grow it, this, that. Everyone else took their money out. Okay. So whenever I needed it, I didn't have a problem. Until the time I needed it, and I had a problem. But was it expected? It wasn't expected. People say, oh, you should have taken it out. The person's making you money, they're making you halfway decent money. Well, again, it's not mad off over here. I mean, in general. So you wouldn't expect anything to happen. I asked this question a number of times. He said, nah, if he's making your money, what do you care? What difference does it make? He says, can you get it? I said, yeah. He said, don't worry about it. Right? When you need it, get it. So, and that's it. Okay. Right? But that's above nature. That's all they could have known. Everyone else took their money out. Okay. They took the money out. Very good. People want to be in control of their own thing. I said, good, let them deal with it. What am I going to do with all this money? Where am I going to put it? Yeah. You need someone to watch it. So I need someone to watch it. Okay. Well, you got to put trust somewhere. Yeah, so what could have done? Could take it out, put it in CDs. Different CDs. Make 3%, 4%. Right? CDs are pretty strong. They're not going to go under. Right? I think government backed or at least bank backed, whatever. You don't assume a bank's going to go under. Well, pretty safe. Yeah, I could have done that. They need the money for a number of years after that. Okay. Being Monday morning quarterback. Who knows what could have happened? Okay. Either way. Is that something normal? No. I mean, it's more common today, but is it something expected? No. It's not something could have been expected. The person was religious. Okay. Do I expect every non-religious person to be a thief? Not necessarily. But again, I don't think the person was a thief to be a thief. I think he had Chaim, I think it was pretty conceited, right? And put money into something that didn't belong, that belonged to him. Okay. Right? And think bellied up, whatever. But I do believe, my heart of hearts, that he didn't take it for the sake of taking it. That if he would have made the money, he would have put it back. That's what I think. I could be wrong. Right? Maybe I'm too naive. Could have been wrong. I'd give the benefit of the doubt on that. Right? If I find out otherwise, the person was evil incarnate, okay. Yeah, whatever. I've been wrong about some things, been wrong about other things. Fine. Yeah. Yeah, but my heart of hearts, I don't think that was the case. I think he would have returned it. If he made enough money or saved whatever it was, I think that would have been it. Okay, who knows? Right, who knows? But again, at the end of the day, is that to be something to be expected? What's the answer? No. Could not have been expected. All right? Now, you could say, what if you were taken out? What if? Everything's what if. Yeah. Well, maybe things turned out different. Okay. Maybe, God forbid, wouldn't be in this world because, a poor person considered away their debt. So, maybe, okay, would have kept the money, but I wouldn't be here. Maybe benefit everyone else. Doesn't have to listen to me. Okay. Yeah. But there are certain things that you can't control. A lot of things you can't control. Right? You can't control. You don't know what would have happened. Right? Maybe I'll be, after 120 years, God will show me the movie and say, okay, you could have done this. Let's see how your life would have been if you would have done that. Yeah. You can second guess as much as you want. Doesn't matter. Right? But that, some people say, but you could have taken it out. Everyone else took it out. You're right. I could have taken it out. Could have. I would have got it straight away. Good. Where I'm done with it, I don't know. Doesn't matter. It's all conjecture. Could have lost another way. What if they'll give me advice, give a father advice, I want to tell them to take the money, put it here, whatever, and then would have lost it that way. Happened to someone I know. Took money, put it in a business, went into another business and went off. I mean, same business and made a franchise, another franchise, and everything got lost. That's worse. Right? Either they didn't take the business advice or went on their own or whatever it was, and they got burnt. Right? 15 years later, you're still upset. I would say that's worse. Why is it worse? Because you took a nice chunk of money, you blew it. You put it on something and to get bad advice or didn't listen, whatever the case was. That's worse. Why? Because you did it to yourself. When a person does it themselves, they feel a lot worse. Something that happens above nature, it's not your fault. Right? That's not your, there are repercussions, that's for sure. Right? Yeah, the banks don't care. They don't care. They'll just come after you. Say, listen, you owe the money. So yeah, but don't you understand? So this money stolen. Right? So, okay, some of it I recouped, very little, but some of it got recouped, okay. And what happened? They still come after you. Yeah, they don't care. So that great advice, declare bankruptcy. Yeah, I could have done that 8 years. Would have been, yeah, you can't get a bank account. Yeah, plenty of repercussions, negative repercussions. That's like the last thing I want to do. Okay, so a lot of things had to change. Right? A lot of things at that point had to change. Very good. Yeah. So, at the end of the day, could that have been prevented? But you don't know what this is the problem. You don't know what would have happened afterwards. Let's say he took all the money. And who knows where it would have gone, where I would have put it. Maybe in a much safer thing. Okay, but you don't know what's going to be afterwards. You have no idea. The trajectory could go in a totally different way. Totally different way. Yeah, if that was, let's say, God forbid, it's either take the money or you die, right? Okay, let's say you took the money for yourself. You put it to the side, it's gaining interest, whatever, and God takes you out of the world instead. So what's better? The money's intact and you're no longer in this world. Pick your poison. Right? Can't second guess over here. There's no point. Right? Because God wants you to lose the money. That's it. Why? Could be any number of reasons. Could be any number of reasons, but you know what? It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what the reason is. Right? They say, well, it's kind of hard to take. Yeah, it is. I'm not gonna say no, it's hard to take. Right? But 20 years later, okay, so you move on. You have to move on. You can't cry over spilt milk. People say, but you had 20 years. You had 20 years. What did you do in 20 years? I came back. This was starting 19 years. When I come back 2008. So yeah, almost 19 years. Right after Shivsar Tammuz, 17th of Tammuz. So it'll be 20, almost 19 years. Starting 19 years. Okay. Has life been rosy? No, been ups and downs. Sometimes better, sometimes worse. Okay. But I'm part of the pot like everybody else. Like everybody else. Sometimes better, sometimes not. Etc. Married off kids here. Very good. That was pretty miraculous. In of itself. Good families for the most part. I got no complaints. No complaints. I would say, but look what you could have done in 20 years. What could I have done? Could I have retrained in something? Could have. Yeah, that's one claim. Could have. Maybe it's just gonna, be an accountant, do something, do something else. Just do that. Okay, they want to. They paid a price that way. Okay. So now, whatever. Am I gonna retrain? No, I'm not gonna retrain. Right? Working on other things. Very good. It goes, doesn't go, whatever. But regardless, you're part of that 60 or 40%. Yeah, that it'll live that way. That's what it is. Yeah, sometimes better, sometimes worse. Okay. But that time I had an opportunity to finish shots. Finish the entire time, it's worth something. Not worth a hefty bank account, right? It's worth something for sure. And other things happen where I am today would never have been where I could have been 20 years ago. Even all the things I wanted to do, even if I could have done it because I had money, no, wouldn't have been the same. Not going to want more experience, want more life experience. So was it worth it? It's worth it. I wish other things worked out, but it's worth it. Right? So you live, you learn. Right? But if most of the people go through this is something someone grew up upper middle class, spoke about this last night, so I don't want to harp on it, too much. Someone grew up upper middle class and whatever, they don't understand these struggles. Because they have too many kids. Even if you had fewer kids, it would be hard. Right? You have to marry off kids, other things. Right? People forget that also. Even if you're doing okay, marrying off kids is different. It's a different beast. Here, you don't need as much money, but you still need money. So where's it going to come from? Well, people do it. It's miraculous. Says it's not Rebbe. It's a greater miracle than the 6-day one. Yeah, how other Orthodox Jews marry off their kids. It's a miracle. A friend of mine married off, I don't know, 4 kids in a year and a half. 4 or 5 kids, and a penny to his name. How he did it? Don't know. Probably majored that. Somehow. Whatever it is. Yeah, people do it. So people can struggle if you have no kids. People can struggle if you have a lot of kids. God can provide either way. Right? But what's the issue? The issue is, we said last time, I worked hard. Person tells a friend of mine, I worked hard. I made money. Why are you suffering? You're almost 60. Why are you having difficulty? They only have 4 kids. Yeah, why are you having difficulty? Should be having difficulty this age. There are people that struggle. That's their trial. That may be their main trial right there. Doesn't mean they don't have other difficulties. That could be the main one. A great rabbi once told me, your money will come back at some point. Didn't tell me when. Right? One of the Torah giants, the last generation, Rabbi Yisrael Yaakov Fisher, blessed memory. He said, me in 10 lifetimes, I'll never have money. It's like, my family will never have money. That's the way it is. Yeah? It's not going to happen according to nature. By you, it should come back. He just didn't, he didn't tell me when. Right? Maybe come to me in a dream and tell me. Yeah, but he didn't tell me when. Okay. For some people, that is their trial. One of my rabbis, blessed memory, that was his trial, for sure. Or one of the trials. Always struggled. He always told me his kids got what they needed, maybe not exactly the time they needed, but they got it. Okay. So that's easier, They had apartments paid for. Okay, it's living expenses, marrying off kids. That's okay, that's enough. That's enough. So you would see people at night, dealing with all their issues or whatever. It's trained psychologists also. Absolute genius in Gemara and genius in general. Okay, but that's where he struggled. That 100% is where he struggled. He had tremendous health issues also. Major health issues. Had a kidney transplant in probably his 50s. Right? But, tremendous problems with gout, right? And other things. And whatever. He died young. He died in the early 70s. Right? But, absolute genius. Kids, whatever. Doing unbelievable things. He had 2 major struggles. I mean, he probably had others. I was very close to him, but those are the 2 major struggles. Health and major health issues. Major health issues. And financial issues. Never complained. But that's that was never going to change. Right? His health issues were never going to change. Yeah, some got better, some got worse. Right? Got a kidney transplant, a lot of things changed. Right? But we still had other issues. Financially, that never changed. That absolutely never changed. He lived month to month. That's how he lived. But he didn't have the expense of, paying a mortgage and whatever. So that was already done. That was already done. Very good. So he owned his house. Okay. I don't know. Took out loans against the house, married for his kid. I don't know what he did exactly. Whatever it is. That's what some people do. They'll take out loans against their house and then eventually downsize. So they can marry off the kids. Some people do. Regardless. Some people, that's their challenge. Or multiple challenges. Imagine you have all these health issues plus money issues. I mean, I don't exactly know how a kidney transplant went. I mean, who paid for it or whatever, but I do know one of his kids said that, because of the, I don't know, had a Filipino taking care of him at the end, and burial costs a lot of money, whatever. So I remember one of the kids said, if you know anyone that can help donate, right? They don't have money. They don't have money. They never had money. Yeah, but there are people who grow up that way, that live that way, and that's their challenge, right? In many ways, it's a greater challenge than someone being rich, because that challenge, because I've been on both sides, that challenge is Are you going to be thankful even for the little that you have? That's a big challenge. Now, I can say that, being rich now, people bother you day and night because they need help. That's a big challenge. If I had to do it again, I'd do it totally different. Okay, learn my lesson. Learn my lesson, right? But on the other end, when you need money and money comes in, or how it comes in, or however it works, and you're thankful for every little thing you have, because money just comes in whenever it comes in, so you look at the world very differently. Very, very differently. That's the test. That essentially is the test. Could be other parts of the test also, right? But that's essentially the test. Okay. Now, is that easy? I'm not going to say it's easy, per se, right? But again, what's the harder part? What's the harder part of the challenge? The harder part of the challenge is, I'm not saying people have to bail you out. I'm not saying, we mentioned last time Pirkei Avos, so I don't want to rehash too much of it. Person lives month to month. Why do they live month to month? Now maybe they had a major surgery, so now they have to pay it off. Or I made it very simple. Not even has to do with had a major expense. I know somebody still in major debt or in debt in general. The child was young, had to have a number of operations. Had travel, outside of Israel, whatever. The person does okay as a scribe or whatever, but they don't have money to cover this. You don't have money to, probably barely any money. Try to raise some money, I guess, to cover this surgery, whatever it was, life-threatening surgery. Had to do it. Save his kid's life. Anybody would do that. But expensive enough to gazoo. It could be under $150,000 in debt at least. Forget marrying off his kid. That's a whole other issue. It's a whole other issue. Yeah. Now, is that his fault? It's not his fault. The kid got sick. Right? His kid had issues. Okay. So if his kid had issues, they had to have major surgery. Where's the money coming from? Yeah, you do GoFundMe, you do charity things. Okay, but let's say he tried that or whatever, or he didn't. I don't know what the case was. Doesn't matter. Yeah, and this person is left with $150,000 debt. Plus, he has to live, and plus, he has to marry off his kids. They say, "Oh, he's got 10 kids. It's his fault." Did he expect his kid to have a life-threatening thing? No. Now, it would have been hard to marry off his kids anyway. Fine. Everybody has that issue. No, anybody doesn't have that issue. First thing, let's have money. Yeah. But hey, you had an expense you never thought of. Yeah. I don't know what number kid it was. Doesn't really matter. Right? But you have that kind of expense. It doesn't get covered. Or maybe part of it gets covered. And you're left with a $200,000 paid, $200,000 thing you got to pay. Yeah. So maybe a person scrambles to, get the money somehow. Yeah. Somehow they scramble. I don't know. But they have to pay it back. They have to pay it back. Yeah, so they're up against the wall. Even money they make, they have to live. But how are they going to pay that back? Do they have a choice? No, the kid would have died. You have no choice. You have no choice. What happens, let's say a person got paid at a child, I don't know, drug addict. Right? Send to rehab, costs a mint. Send the kid to rehab. And he lapses, you got to send him again. Different things. And you go out of your mind. Okay. Tens of thousands of dollars. Easy. Spent on all your psychiatrists and psychologists and this and that. Yeah, where's the money come from? Where's the money come from? If you're doing halfway decent, where's the money come from? It's gotta come from somewhere. Is that the person's fault? No, it's not the person's fault. Not their fault. Maybe it is their fault. The kid's a drug addict. I don't know. But let's say it's not their fault. Yeah, get a little self-esteem. Was bullied. Yeah, maybe sexually abused, which in most cases a lot of people go to drugs anyway, or commit suicide for the most part. Okay, I'm not here to blame, why people get stuck on these things. A lot of different reasons. Yeah, so now, what was the person supposed to do? You want to keep your kid alive? You do whatever you can to keep your kid alive, hopefully, if you care that much. Yeah, but it's going to cost. It's going to cost a pretty penny. For sure it's going to cost a pretty penny. All the way around. Right? So now what do you do with that? So these are things, let's say, beyond our control. They're beyond your control. Right? But we mentioned something very specific. People living paycheck to paycheck. Why live paycheck to paycheck? Because they don't make enough money. It's not that they're trying to keep up with the Joneses. You have people like that. And then they have problems. They have credit card problems, other things. Okay, we're not even talking about that. We're talking about people that just don't make enough money. And what happens when you don't make enough money? You get behind. And what happens when you get behind? You have to try and catch up. What happens to try and catch up? Then the game starts again. Right? Starts over and over and over again. Right? But sometimes you get caught. That's all part of the fun. You get caught. And what happens when you get caught? All right? So then you got to try and dig out of it. Now you're going to say it's the person's fault. Why is it the person's fault? A person decides, let's say they decide, what do they want to do? They want to help save the world. They want to change the world. So what do? What do? They become a social worker. Yeah? Very high ideal. Become a social worker. Yeah? Very good. You're helping others. Right? You're doing a lot of good work. But social workers don't get paid that much. They don't make a lot of money. Right? Let me now back to all my questions here. Right? How much do social workers make? Let's see. $61,000 annually. $30 an hour. Now, clinical social workers maybe make more money. Between $80,000 and $100,000. Okay. Hospital healthcare social workers between 60 and 80. So let's say 70. Okay. 70. How much you taking home after? Let's say 55. You're taking home 55 after? Not very much. Not making very much money. Right? Divided by 4,500, 5,000 a month. Okay, it helps. Sure, you need another income. You have kids. Whatever, even school, it's free. Still need another income. Right? Most likely. Right? You can live on 60,000 by yourself. Potentially. Right? Potentially. Okay, let's say. But they're not making a lot of money. Right? They're not making a lot of money. So they're not making a lot of money. What should they do? Find another profession. Thank you very much. It's where their passion is. It's what they're good at. Maybe do some things on the side. I don't know. Whatever it is. Whatever it is. I know someone, okay, so let's call a spade a spade. I know someone's a social worker. A social worker for many years. Many, many years. What does the husband do? Husband is in sales. Does whatever, let's say does halfway decent. Combined salary, they're not living the life of Riley. Per se. Doesn't mean they don't necessarily go on vacation or other things, but they're not, they're not living the life of Riley. Right? Let's just say. Let's just say. So at the end of the day, you say, well, what are they supposed to do? Well, the husband can make more money by sales, this, that, maybe. Right? But the other job is maxed out. It's maxed out. Even with benefits and other things, very good, it's maxed out. So even if it's maxed out, what are you making? 70, 75, you take it home 60. That's not a lot of money. Not a lot of money in general. Even if they only have, let's say, 2 kids. Okay, doesn't matter. You got to send them to college, most likely. Another big waste of money. So, okay, maybe they'll get scholarships, whatever. But you got to say, oh, look at this poor person. Yeah, they're gonna struggle to a certain point. They are going to struggle. Why? Not because they're spending money they don't have. That has nothing to do with it. What are they doing? They don't make enough. Right? Okay, so let them go to professionals and they'll see where they can cut down, whatever. But again, we made very clear last night, right? I can't believe I'm still rehashing this. Yeah, a person is $3,000, $3,000 in the hole every month. That's not going to be fixed by professionals in general. Maybe a little bit here, a little bit there. Maybe it'll add up. Maybe it's maybe you save maybe $1,000 a year, not a month. But what are you going to do to make that up? That's a problem. That is a significant problem, right? You want to make everything add up, but it doesn't. So then what happens? So you wait to pay for things, and when you get money, you pay for things, and the whole thing starts over. That's what happens. That's how a lot of people live. Now, some people be horrified by this. They go, and say, well, yeah, we make money. Other people made money. Now they know people, I'm sure, that struggled, right? A certain business and whatever, okay, right? But the vast majority of people struggle. What's the problem? It's not their fault. Why is it their fault? They're in positions where they don't make a lot of money. We're not even talking about making minimum wage because people can't do anything else, right? So they're making minimum wage. Working, I don't know, work in the supermarket, do other things. Okay, so you say, I should have gone to college, I would have got a better job, this, that. So depending what it is, you're not making tons of money, depending on the field. Yeah, so what are you, they say, but that's what I'm good at. Okay, but you got to try and make ends meet. Very good. Very good. But is the person like that going to struggle? Yes. They're going to struggle. What's the reason they're going to struggle? Not because of spendthrift. Not because, they're going on vacation all the time. Not because they're doing nothing. You know why they're going to struggle? Because they don't make enough money. That's why they struggle. That's why most people struggle. That's it. I'm not talking about people, people who have handicaps. Yeah. So, okay, they're going to get a certain money a month disability. Okay. That's going to be very hard to live on. Depending. Now, if you own your own house and other things, okay, so, depending, a person can live on that, right? Potentially. Yeah, that's a different issue. So I'm not even talking about that. That's a whole other thing, right? That's a whole other thing. Person has a handicap, could be a physical handicap, could be a mental handicap, right? Now, there's a story someone told me that let's say someone has, I don't know, let's say a borderline personality disorder or something. Yeah, so let's say you get help for that and you get disability. Right? Let's say you get disability for that. Okay. Now what's the problem? It's okay to get disability. So let's say, I don't know, they do sales, but they make money. Right? Let's say they make, I don't know, 50,000 a year. 60,000 a year, let's say, before taxes. Now, if a person's got a claim certain disability, if they see you're making $60,000 a year, you ain't getting disability. There's no chance in hell you're getting disability, right? Why not? Because you're making no money, right? That goes out the window. Even a person would have some borderline personality disorder or who knows what, right? And want to claim disability, they're never going to give it to you, right? The big catch 22. Big catch 22. Even a person made a big blunder, a huge blunder, right? Let's say they made an unbelievable blunder. They're not going to care. They're going to say, well, it's caused by personality because, I don't know, figure it out, whatever it is. Whatever they might have done. They can say, they got a brain problem. Right? They're going to say, okay, let me see your taxes the last 3 years. Or the last 2 years. And they say, wow, you made $70,000 last year. That's pretty impressive. What kind of brain disorder do you have? Now you could show, a person could try and show, say, listen, a person, invested money in something and they never should have done it and they got hoodwinked and this happened before and it happened a third time. Like, this is the fifth time that it happened. Okay, let's say it did. Let's say it did. The person made like 3 major blunders, right, in the last 5 years. Let's say. Okay. And they want to say it's because of brain disorder. Very good. Very good. What's the committee going to say? They're going to evaluate. What's the committee going to say? The committee's going to say, okay, you have brain disorder. Let's say they're diagnosed. They're diagnosed, they have certain brain disorder. Okay. Now, if we're going to show any money for disability, they're going to say, how much money did you make? Now, if you say you can't work and you show that you can't work and you didn't make any money, very good. And what happens if you made 60,000, 70,000 a year? They're going to look at that and say, sorry, your brain disability is not that bad. I shouldn't laugh, right? Sorry, you do it. You've been diagnosed. You 100% have been diagnosed, right? But I guess it's really not that bad because you're making 70,000 a year. Or you're averaging over the last 2 years, you're making 65,000 a year. That's pretty good. If you had a brain disorder, you'd be making 30,000 a year. 40,000 a year, if that. Or if you have, someone whatever gets disability because they can't work. right? And anxiety and a million other things they have, right? Okay, so they're going to get disability, right? But they can't work. It's impossible for them to work. Okay, right? So even if his wife works, still, it's not going to be enough. So he gets disability. Okay, but if you're making too much money, if you're making that kind of money, they're going to say you're right. You have a brain disorder, but you make too much money. Where in the world are they going to give you disability from? Not only that, you make more money by it. So you say, okay, so take disability and take the money you make. Oh, they're not going to do that, right? Or like, let's say, get a, and this hurts people who make halfway decent money, but not a ton of money, right? What can happen? Let's say, you have to pay your municipality tax, right? You own a house or an apartment here, so you have to pay municipality tax, right, every month, right? So if you have so many kids or whatever, you can get a discount, right? But the question is how much. First, first of all, how many kids you have, what the breakdown, how much you make in order to qualify. Let's say to get 60% off, 80% off, whatever it may be. But you make too much money. Now you could lie. In theory, you could lie, right? Doctor, bank account, and who knows what. Some people say it's a big mitzvah to do that, but okay. We're not going to go there. But if you make too much money, you don't get benefits. So you have to pay it. You get you get crunched one way, you get crunched another way, right? And whatever, right? So again, the bottom line is some people will suffer just from this, right? Maybe they'll have, God forbid, they'll have heart issues, or they'll have, medical issues, whatever it may be. But there's some people, this is gonna be their thing. I can say in my own life, thank God, poo. Over the last 20 years, what's the main thing been? Financial. Sometimes been better, sometimes worse, whatever, right? But thank God, hasn't been anything else. Pretty much anything else, right? There is what to be thankful for. I know someone got 4 kids, 3, 4 kids, that can't get married. All my kids got married like that, right? Working on one now, so everyone pray for Malka Devora Bas Mazel, right? I mean, it's only 21, but still, we're gonna be 21. Either way, right? Either way, my other kids went very quick. I'll take that. I'll take that than being home. Yeah, and kids 25, 26, 27, not married, then our society is already old, right? In many ways, it's not good because all the friends get married, right? It's very hard. Okay, right? What would you rather have? A friend of mine, I have to ask him tomorrow. He was praying for 5 kids in the same family are not married. 5 kids. I think 4 or 5 is not married. That's very hard. That's very, very hard. I don't know what the issue is, but that's a very hard thing, right? So, as this friend of mine would say, mentioned last night as well, you get hit in the pocket. That's the only thing you got hit by. Be thankful. It's only in the pocket. It's not with anything else, more or less. If you have health issues, okay, forget what I said, right? If you only got a hit in the pocket, be thankful for that, because other things are gonna be harder to deal with. You're gonna say, but money's a hard thing to deal with. You're right. Money's a hard thing to deal with. The big test, the huge test. Yeah, yeah. Health, the bigger test. I think in many ways the bigger test. Especially, let's say you take somebody that has whatever that's in chronic pain. I know somebody now much older, and I don't know, they did an operation and whatever, totally messed her up, and she's not doing anything. She just refuses to do anything. Yeah, so they gave her, I don't know, 4 or 5 years to live. She's still trucking along. Thank God. But kind of like a walking time bomb. In a certain way. Okay, but that's how they're dealing with it. Okay, so they retired. They're doing okay. I mean, never had money before, so whatever it is. Whatever it is. But at the end of the day, everyone has their own. Everyone has their own thing. The question is how you're going to deal with it. And if it's something, above nature, you can say, good. It's above nature. You still have to deal with it. There are things, I agree, as someone there pointed out. I definitely agree. There are things we do to ourselves. True. risks maybe a person takes they shouldn't take. Good, right? You have to own up to that. Very good. It's hard. Okay, right? But it's only money. It's only pain in the pocket. It's not pain with other things, right? So the point is, if you have pain with other things, forget what I said. Yeah. If a person only got hit in the pocket, you should be kissing the ground. Literally, you should be kissing the ground. Now you're going to say, isn't being hit in the pocket hard? Sure it is. No one says it's easy. Nobody says that's easy. Right? But if that's all it is, and you don't have any bodily pain, like in general, not like 95% of the world, there's some sort of, pain that they're feeling on a regular basis, I think you should be kissing the ground. The creditor's knocking on the door. Okay, you got to deal with it. You got to deal with the hardship. Okay. Right? Right? But that's only what it is. It's not anything else. Yeah, but it could be very painful. You're right. It's not the same. This is not the same as physical pain. All right, tell me, every time the phone rings, it causes anxiety and all that. Yeah, it could. It very well could. I don't think that it disappears. Right? When you get hit in the pocket, that's all it is. That's all it is. Get hit in the pocket. So, so you get a bigger portion of the world to come. Yeah, that's what it is. When you get hit in other things that are much harder to deal with, you thank God you only got hit in the pocket. Right? So, I tell my wife this all the time. If that's the only thing we got hit on, good. Let it be that. Let it be that. Kids are healthy, grandkids are healthy, another one on the way. Like, okay. Yeah. So you're rich in other ways. Right? Okay. You want other things to go hand in hand. You don't get everything. Right? Like my Rebbe once said. He once said that when I lost all my money, so he brought me the Gemara and Brachos. What does the Gemara and Brachos say? Gemara and Brachos says, not everyone inherits both worlds. Meaning, either a person's a big rabbinic scholar, or or they have money. Usually they don't mix. Usually they don't mix. I remember the first Purim I was buying when I came back. Told them, everything I learned during the winter or whatever. I said, listen, if I can't have the blessing of money, I said, you give me the blessing of Torah. Yeah? Now, you want both. Obviously, you want both. Right? They don't necessarily go hand in hand. So I asked him, I said, are you humoring me? Or are you making fun of me? So he just smiled. So he just had a big smile. So I said, okay. Right? You don't normally get both. Right? So what would you rather have? Live a Torah life and you struggle that way? Or you don't have Torah? Yeah. You don't normally get both in this world. Right? That's the truth. And if you do, you better darn well know how to use it. Right? Because God, if God gave you money and He gave you the ability to learn Torah and you're learning a lot of Torah, you better know how to use the money. Because if you don't use the money right, you can take it away. Right? Kaufman's language, chump don't want it, chump don't get it. So yeah, you have to know how to use it. You for sure have to know how to use it. Right? But you don't always get both. And usually both don't mix. Rabbi Miller said this when he went, he went to learn Slobodka. Right? In Yeshiva in Slobodka. Right? In Europe. He was an American boy, right? He went to Europe to learn. And he said, who were the big people there, that were big rabbinic scholars? They didn't have a penny to their names. They did not have a penny to their names. They were happy. They were ecstatic. Would they like to have, a little more money? Probably. Right? But, you don't get both. You don't normally get both. But again, what's the problem? People say it doesn't have to be this hard. Okay. Yeah. It's worse if you did it to yourself, right? You have no one else to blame but yourself. Good. But if a person continues to struggle in this, their whole lives, then a person can say, that's my test. Right? You have to say that because it doesn't make sense otherwise. Why would a person continue to have it hard? Right? And the answer is to be thankful even for the little that they have. Now, can it change? It could change. It for sure could change. But if a person sees consistency day in and day out and it doesn't change for the most part, when maybe it should, okay, so you got to pray, right? You got to work hard. You got to keep doing what you're doing, right? You got to put your best foot forward, right? As we always say. But a person has to realize that might be just their struggle, and that's the way it's been. And that's not going to change. That may not change, right? You hope it does. And, anyone in that situation, we hope it does, right? We certainly hope it changes, for sure. But, if that's the test, and for the most part that is the test, then I think compared to other tests, it's a better test to have, right? Health issues, serious test, right? Serious test. Question. Someone said it's going to be said if we had it good, we wouldn't be close to Hashem. Yeah, it says in the book of Deuteronomy exactly that, right? Exactly that. The bottom line is that the more a person has, the more they want, right? And that's going to be the test of the last generation. That's going to have a lot. They're going to be wealthy in general. And because of that, it's going to cause them to go away from Torah and kick God in the face, right? So if you don't have a lot, you have what to pray for. If you have a lot, what do I need to pray? Right? Exactly that reason, right? I always say, if a non-Jew had a lot of money, why would they want to convert? You don't normally, I haven't found it, right? But you don't normally find a non-Jew or a secular Jew becomes religious and they have money. Usually the two don't go hand in hand. I'm not saying it's a contradiction, but usually it doesn't. Usually it doesn't. Right? So the question is, if you had it so good, right, you wouldn't pray. What do you need God for? You're God yourself. You made it yourself. Right? You wouldn't need to pray for sure. Right? Because you got everything. Right? So, that's true. That doesn't go hand in hand. Right? Usually. Someone asks, when do we ever stop learning? Or when do we start? You start whenever you start. Right? You got to start at some point. Right? You never stop learning, that's for sure. Right? That is for sure. You never stop. I would say though that at the end of the day, you got to put your best foot forward. That's what you got to do. And if you don't, they say if you don't start now, when are you going to do it? Right? When are you going to do it? You got to start at some point. That is going to be the first question God's going to ask you. Did you learn Torah? Right? Or were you honest in business? Right? But did you learn Torah? You say, I didn't have time. Why not? I was busy working. Okay, God's going to say, let's see. Were you really busy working? All this time you're busy working and have no time to learn? I see that you spend 5 years or 10 years of your life scrolling on your phone. Let's add up all the time you scrolled on your phone. You watched, short videos. Let's add it up. Let's say it's 4 hours a day. Right? The person does that. 4 hours a day. Yeah, I'm being generous here. Let's say it's 4 hours a day. 4 hours a day, you do it 7 days a week. Right? Or 6 days a week. Let's say you don't do it on Shabbos. Good. 24. That's 24 hours. Right? That part of my math was good. 24 hours is 1 day. Yeah, it's 1 day a week the person wasted on their phone. Right? That's 4 days a month. That's 50 days a year, 48 days a year. A month and a half a year. Multiply it by 50 years, 40 years. Right? You're talking like years of your life. Years. So a person will say, I didn't have time to learn. God, what do you mean? I got 15.35 years you spent on your phone watching stupid cat videos or other things that had nothing to do with Torah. Yeah, total waste of time. Forget about movies, sporting events, other things. I'm just talking about scrolling and watching short videos or texting for no reason, let's say. So let's say it's 15.3 is a third of a person's life, maybe. A quarter, let's say. Fifth, I don't know, whatever. Right? Because that person was still 70, right? Right? So 15 out of 70, right, is 5 times almost, 4.5 times. That's a scary thought. 4.5 times, of a person's life is spent doing that. No, sorry. Whatever. Let's say a quarter. Quarter of a person's life. Quarter of a person's life in this world. Because I didn't have time to learn. Really? God says, let me play back the video. Let me show you everything you did. Let me show you all the time. And I see this all the time, right? I go on buses here and there, right? I was on the bus this morning. And a guy's just scrolling the entire time. That's what people do. They don't like to be alone with themselves. I've spoken about that. But imagine if it's a quarter of a person's life. Or even a little bit less than that. I'll be generous. Yeah? That's an enormous amount of time. I can't even imagine the embarrassment. A person's going to even make such a claim. You're going to say, God, I didn't have time. God's going to say, really? You didn't have time? Let's check. Right? What's the first thing a person, when a person dies, they see the light flash before their eyes. Everything they did. They're going to see all the scrolling. It's going to go like really, really fast. Really, really fast. All that time. Everybody does it. It's a common thing. Anyone's got a smartphone. It's very common. I'm not saying it's good. It's common. Yeah. What are you going to answer? That's going to be part of what Gehenna is. What hell is. Because you're going to see the real truth. And you're going to be embarrassed. That's part of the embarrassment. It's part of the, what do you call it? It's part of the pain you're going to feel. I was going to say a quarter of your life gone. Gone! Can't bring it back. And most likely you're not coming back in a reincarnated soul, so you can't fix it. That's it. You're done. Right? Now, other things offset that. Hopefully it does. Whatever it's going to be. Whatever judgment's going to be. But you imagine you have to admit that, and you're going to see that as clear as day. I can't even imagine the embarrassment. Whatever a pure soul may go through, I can't imagine the embarrassment it's going to feel. Cannot imagine. God's going to knock that out like, like someone kicked a 60-yard field goal. Like it's going to go straight through the uprights, yeah? You're going to kick it right out of the park. Yeah, you're going to take your soul, and who knows what he's going to do with it. Chutzpah, person, I didn't have time. You didn't have time? Really? Let me show you all the time you waste. Let me show you. Again, maybe some things are onus. Okay, maybe some things get taken off. Very good. Yeah, but you get all these hours. All these hours. The study done a number of years ago was 4 hours a day a person scrolling on the phone for no reason. Or watching short videos, whatever. 4 hours a day. For some people, it's going to be more than that for sure. Over a lifetime, 30, 40, 50 years, I get, you imagine what that is? It could be half a person's life. They're on to 6, 7 hours a day, which could very well be. Yeah, 6, 7 hours a day, you're toast. Totally wasted. You don't have anything to show for it. Zero. A lot of enjoyment you watched it. Okay, so what? In the bigger scheme of things, the person's in serious trouble. Doesn't mean they can't have a portion of the world to come. You're going to need to be, severely purified over here. Or rectified, let's say better. Your soul's going to be rectified. All the garbage. All the garbage. The embarrassment, if a person feels bad now, imagine what the embarrassment is going to be later. It's good to feel the embarrassment now. Multiply by infinity what's going to be later. But to make such a claim, God's going to say, really? Before I show you the video, now you know what the absolute truth is. You want to make that claim again? You want to make that claim, you stupid soul? You want to make the claim? Go ahead. I'll flatten you like a pancake. Or if someone's learning Torah via phone, that's fine. I'm not talking about that. That's fine. You're getting credit for learning Torah. I'm not talking about learning Torah. I'm talking about learning garbage. I'm talking about stupid videos. Yeah, stupid cat videos. Or cartoons, or watching TV shows, or I don't know, whatever. Or sporting events, or who knows what. Whatever a person wastes their time doing when it's not Torah. If it's Torah, that's fine, it's Torah. Then it shouldn't be distracted. It's only Torah. Very good. So that's fine. Yeah, and if it's not Torah, it's not considered Torah, but, person listen to the news. Plenty of Lashon Hara. Yeah, other things. Whatever it is. Whatever it is that's not Torah, yeah, it's a problem. Unless it's something learning's going to help you. Most of these things never going to help you. 99.9%. Like someone told me, on cable I can watch the History Channel. I said, do you ever watch it? But I could. Could also watch Doctor Who. It's probably dead by now. Yeah, I can probably watch, I can watch Doctor Who. Okay. How many Doctor Who episodes have you ever seen? Not too many. Probably 0. Okay. Yeah, you can watch a lot of educational documentaries. Good. I guarantee it's not what you're watching. Put all the money I don't have on the table and say that's not what you're watching. Right? Most likely. Right? So if that's the case, you don't have an excuse. If you're learning Torah, okay, very good. Right? So then you use it for the right thing. Right? But if a person's not using it for Torah, what happens when you're not watching, listening to Torah? So if you're watching other things, also a problem. You'll get credit for learning Torah, no question. Absolutely no question. But the problem's going to be if you're not doing that. Right? That's the problem. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, I'm gonna stop here. I do this every Sunday, 9 o'clock is time, 4 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions? Find me on Facebook at Michael Koppman, Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism, orthodoxconversion.com. Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism on YouTube. There I got videos, Q&As, ethics on fathers, book of Leviticus. You want to send me an email? Rabbi Chaim Koppman at gmail.com, RBBICHAIM,
Shalom.
MAN at gmail.com.